From the gate, man.
Okay, so I'll start by the by the drums, I mean. So basically, I guess I like every of my tunes start by the drums, like most of producers do, because I feel like it's key to have your drums like sounding powerful already, like from the get go. So these are my drums here. This. As you can see, it's super simple. I always use drums in my MIDI in a MIDI channel, so that way I can set up the sidechain like super fast. Yeah, it's recording. Wait. How do you normally start a project? It depends, because sometimes you kind of go into a new blank sheet and start by the sound side if you want to like experiment with some sounds. Otherwise, if I want to start like a song, like a full song, I would always start by the intro. So the way that I started this project was like I was messing around with these vocals. This. Of course, this didn't sound like this at first, but it was just me chopping up some vocals. One, for example. So you can put a vocal in a sampler and put the slice mode in, and it like that's super easy to do. That's the quicker and easiest way, I would say. And after that, I had this. And I don't really remember which step of the post processing I started with, but I'm pretty sure it was vocal synth. So it was something like this at first, vocal synth. So it was just me like trying to make it sound a little bit more like a little bit cooler, I guess. What's the original sample? So this is this one. This is the original sample.
I know you're telling me you're leaving, but all I wanna do is hold you now and hear the sound of your heartbeat.
So it's a really clean vocal. That's what I like the most. It's not super like it's not the most crazy vocal ever, but it's super clean. So I have a lot of room to distort it and like to mess around with. So I started with vocal synth, and I'm like very much distorting it with the distorting here, adding a lot of drive tone set to analog mode. Of course, I'm using I forgot the word. This to make it sound in key. And of course, I'm filtering a little bit because otherwise it's super harsh. So I'm just gonna turn this off for now. You can see it's super harsh right now. So I add a little bit of filter and transform to make it sound a little bit more quiet. How do you map that play certain parts like that? I work in like everything. Yeah, it's basically it's mapped to your keyboard. So in slice mode, it gets it starts playing from C1, I think. So from C1 up to C3 or something, depending on the length of the sample, you can start playing notes. You can go an octave higher and keep playing. So it was basically me just like trying to hit some cool parts in the top and make a melody out of that. So yeah, once I had that, it was just me adding some details, OTT of course, to make it sound like more in place and not super, basically compress it just a little bit. So erosion to add a little bit of that top end since I lost pretty much all the high end with the filter. So that vocal chop is like pretty clean so far, and at that point, so now I need to think about what's gonna be like the environment of it. So vocal chop is gonna be the main element, but of course you have a lot of stuff going on. So we had the bass. Once I had the vocal chop, I started with the bass, which is this. And this is like super simple. This is a Reactor 6 preset. It's just I just tweak it a little bit, but I'm not doing like anything crazy here. So it's just OTT to make it sound like more in place. And that was pretty much it. So now I have this. So now I have this. Which is pretty much the entire intro, right? So now at this point, it's just me trying to add some little details here and there to make it sound more like pleasant to the ear, I guess. So now I added this, as well as this. A little bit of, I think this is bad right here. Some kind of flute thing. So at this point, like the intro is pretty much done. What I need to do right now is like think about what kind of drums I want to use, or maybe if I don't want to use drums. So at this point, I added this. Like super simple stuff. I like to keep my intros kind of simple though. Yeah, we have this now, and of course like the main drums underneath. But yeah, I always start like if I know that I want to write a song, I would always start by the intro, because it is so hard for me to write a drop and then like make it fit into and then like write an intro for the drop instead. I like to write the drops for the intro instead, like the other way around basically. So yeah, at that point, like the intro was pretty much done. So now I needed to figure out which way this was gonna go into the drop. So I knew I wanted to make like some kind of breakdown and twist it a little bit into the drop. So that way it was like this cute intro into a heavy drop. So now I started doing this part. I guess you mean that part, like that heavy part. So basically, it's pretty much the exact same thing. The only thing that I did was changing the drums. This part, so it's like a back and forth between like call and response kind of thing. So this is the call, and there's that little fill underneath, like this little thing, which like drops into this. And then it goes back again to the main drums. So it was like that was the idea, to make some kind of back and forth between two different elements, and that way I was gonna be able to turn that cute intro into a heavy thing easier. Because if I wanted to jump like from this part to this part, maybe it would sound kind of weird. So it was gonna be like super unexpected in my opinion. So this way it's like a good way to connect both parts. And yeah, once I'm in the build up, like at this point I didn't have any of the drop prepared. So it was just me adding stuff until I figured like what was gonna be the drop like. So I actually I think I have like a previous version of this one where the drop is like a different thing, but for the drop I wanted to have that first fake out thing, which is this. So I knew I wanted to have that part like empty for that kind of fake out thing. So that's something that I do a lot in my projects, like kind of arrangement where I do this fake out and then into a long phrase and then go back into this kind of not fake out but this same section but a little bit different, and then you go into a long phrase again. I think that's important, and it's a lot easier to remember to have this kind of long phrase repeating over and over, and if you manage to do it properly, it's not going to sound repetitive, even though this is like pretty much the same thing repeating over and over. Hey, thanks. Yeah, I just got to 2 like a month ago. Okay, so yeah, that's something that I do a lot. Like the first bar into 3 bars of the main phrase, I would say. So that's I pretty much always do that, and I feel like it's easier for me to write drops that way. It's not that I do it because like I force myself to do it. It's because it gets easy for me. But yeah, we have the build up into the drop, which like the build up is like super simple as well. It's just a bunch of effects and stuff. So it's pretty much a lot of effects are
Make your music stand out, get more views, and way more engagement. Bring your music to life. Get Music Visualizer in every format, even for social media. Get started today. The link is in the description.
like filling out the entire frequency spectrum, and trying to create a lot of tension into the build-up, into the drop, I mean.
Who from the gate, man?
Yeah, the drop is like pretty simple. I don't have like any layering going on because this is kind of old. I think I made this project around March last year. So this is pretty simple. I don't have like any weird layering or stuff going on. It's just good sounding presets, I would say. So I think I started messing around with this bass until I got it sounding fine. So this is the main bass that I started with. And what I like to do in the drops is just create like the main one and then duplicate it and create a lot of version of that same one. So that way, like everything sounds more cohesive between like each sound, because I don't have like a lot of different post-processing chains and all that stuff. Every bass is coming from the same place, I would say. The bass you used on the response on the bridge between the intro and the left. So this is super simple. This is just, I mean, it looks kind of complicated, but it's pretty much just 2 saw waves, I think. Okay. So let's hear how the main how this bass sounds without any post-processing. I think my basic shapes are kind of fucked up right now. I think this. I don't know why it looks that way. So it's pretty much to detune cell waves um, with the random all the way up, and I'm cutting a little bit of the high end, a little bit of distortion, but pretty much this is super simple. It doesn't sound fine at all right now. So what I'm doing right now is just adding filtering and more distortion to it. So I'm pretty much taking out the entire like all the information of the sound right now. I'm just leaving below 92 hertz. Oh, wait. Here, okay. So I'm just leaving that part of the sound, and then I'm adding like a lot of effects. So phaser, amp, erosion, but I think the most important one here is the amp. So amp and OTT, of course. The amp is like, it's just distortion. It has a lot of different presets, and I always mess around with this. I think it's super underrated, and I don't know if a lot of people use it. So in this case, I'm using the clean preset. It's pretty much default. I think I just changed the output mode to dual instead of mono. And then I'm adding OTT and a little bit of saturator just to make it a little bit louder, and phaser, of course, to make it more like vocally. And erosion, of course. Erosion, I always use it to just bring back some of the high end that I lost when I do this kind of filtering. That's pretty much it. It's pretty simple. When you start an idea, how do you usually go about it? I mean, what kind of you start? I like to use vocals a lot. So pretty much, if I wanna use vocal chops, I would always start by the vocal itself. And as I said before, I started with the vocal, and then I added the bass, and then it was pretty much done at this point. It was just me trying to enhance it and add details to it to sound a little bit more interesting. But yeah, that was pretty much it. And as I was saying before, the drop is like, I always do this. I create a sound and I duplicate it. So if I click in a different sound, it's pretty much the same post-processing chain. Like all of them are pretty much the exact same thing, but of course I start tweaking some stuff. So even this one, that sounds completely different to this one. If you see the post-processing chain, it's like same thing. So phaser, corpus, saturator, and then this one I'm using phaser, corpus, and saturator, but with different settings, you know. And that way you can pretty much make everything sound the same way, even though the sounds could not be similar between each other. So yeah, I don't know if you want to see the presets, if you want to see anything else about the drop, the sub, the drums. What else do you have in the drop? Another thing that I think is important, are the effects on the drop, behind the drop. So basically the background stuff. So if I play the drop without the basses, like this. And in this project, I'm not using a lot of background stuff, as in Shiver, for example. But I think that stuff like this is pretty important. Some white noise as well, but I think this is turned off. Yeah, this is off. What does these basses sound without any post-processing? Also, do you do any post-processing to the bass riff? The basses are super lame without any post-processing. So the main one, which is this, if I turn off the post-processing, it sounds like this. It's like so funny, but the way that I started making these basses was I started with the corpus, I think, with corpus and an OTT together, because I always do something like this. I always like to start with a little bit of post processing, and I think I started with this. It was fine, but if I turn off everything, it's like super weird. But yeah, the way that this works is, so basically, what I always do is like using the sub within Serum, and I think not a lot of producers use it. And sub pretty much allows me to have this low end frequency that I can always store, right? So if I leave all the post processing on and I turn off the sub, it's like a completely different sound, because I don't have that low frequency that allows me to push distortion in. And so as you can see, and that's something that I always try to do, and I always mess around with different settings like triangle wave or sine wave, different kind of noise, maybe not automating the level and letting the level go out completely out straight to into the distortion. Yeah, like pretty much my entire sound design relies on this technique, I would say, like the sub noise and all that kind of distortion. Hey Kyle, how are you, man? How do you come up with the flows for your drops? Okay, so I have a few things that I try to do. Basically, my drops are a combination of this idea, for example, of the fake out and then long phrase. So that's something that I keep in mind when I try to make a drop. So I always try to write like a long phrase, but I always try to come up with something by accident. So as you can see, like let's look at the LFO shape. I'm automating the LFO1 rate. So basically this LFO. But the thing is, like, there's this option in Serum that's called anchor point, which basically every time you automate or you change the automation here, I mean, if it's on, every time you change the automation here, it's always trying to make the LFO start in one line of the grid. So I'll explain a little bit better later, but this allows me, if I turn it off, allows me to make the LFO go like play the entire time without being right on the grid. So that allows me to create those kind of wonky flows, or maybe like weird flows, because if you hear this pattern, it's like not completely on grid, and that's what makes it so interesting. That's not really like super robotic. It sounds kind of humanized because it has that feature on it. I'll try to explain it better with a different preset later on. But it's pretty much me just messing around with LFO patterns, as well with, like, sometimes I do something like this. If I'm not using just one single note and automating the LFO, what I would do is create something like, I don't know, just create notes and put notes, but put notes out of the grid, basically. Just creating a pattern that's kind of weird. That's not just like the basic 1/8 note or 1/4 note, because I know how it's going to sound already. So I always try to have a happy accident, basically, and come up with something that I wouldn't normally get. So yeah, that's something that I do a lot. And if that doesn't work, and if I get something weird that I like, I would resample it into audio and then mess around with it and try to see if I can like loop a section that's kind of weird, or move it around to the sampler. And yeah, in Shiver I'm gonna show that the main pattern is like a section of the loop that's not even like perfect. It's a weird loop that I found, and it's kind of going out of grid. So yeah, I think that's pretty important. Try to mess around with the sounds instead of just trying to create this thing that you already know how it sounds, Okay, let me see. Is that laser layer just a root not playing the whole time? Let's see. I would usually play the root note or maybe a fifth higher. So this is playing the root note, but as you can see, I'm automating the pitch throughout the entire the first 16 bars. So it's going higher and higher every time, and that's creating a lot of tension. And maybe it's not as noticeable as you can hear now, but if I take it off, it sounds kind of empty. It's definitely one of those things that you notice when it's not there, basically. What stream effects are you using in that preset? Let's see that. So in this sound, I'm doing FMing from cell wave, 2 cell waves, and as you can see, this is +1. So this is pretty much being like the top layer, and the sub is being like the low layer. So the sound consists of 2 parts, I would say. And in the FX section, I'm using hyper just to make it a little bit wider. Distortion to make this sub be a little bit more distorted as well. All passes, because all passes gives you it kind of changes the character of the distortion, I would say. EQ just to take out some of the high end, because I feel like it was a little bit harsh. And delay to create a little bit more space. So this is important in this sound, I would say. A car outside. I don't know if that's sounding through the mic. The delay is pretty important in this sound because it's creating a little bit of room for the sound to be a little bit bigger. It's not that choppy. Do you use limiters? I don't use limiters. Maybe I would use soft clipping somewhere. I don't really use it that much. Oh wait, you asked me if the bass group has any post processing, but I don't use that much process on my basses on the group, I would say, because like the basses themselves already have pretty much a lot of distortion. So what I would do in this in the bass group is like just cut the low end for the external sub to play, and maybe I would enhance or boost the high end, because I feel like I always lose some of the high end in the mono signal. So this is like huge, and a little bit of in the stereo. And that's pretty much it. Glue compressor to keep it like in place, and cabinet and all this stuff are effects that play throughout the track, but they're not doing anything to the sound. And wait, use limiter. I don't use limiters, but for example, I use glue compressors with the soft clipping thing in my bass group. I would say in my bass group, and maybe I don't even know if I use limiters any other place. I'm not a fan of limiters. Do you have 808s in the drop, or do you use the sub in the bass for the sub? No, yeah, I used to sub in the bass to like for sound design purposes. So as I showed before, if I turn off the sub in this sound, it sounds super harsh, super aggressive. But with the sub, it sounds a lot better, right? And I think that's important because you can always cut out the sub layer. So in the group, I'm just low cutting everything below 122 hertz. So that way I can use my separate sub here, like with no problems. but I wouldn't get the same result without using the sub in the preset. Um, how do you work around the pitch getting stuck when pitching in MIDI? I feel like sometimes it goes out of whack. I'm not a fan of using the this automation. I think this is what you mean, right? When you do this, you do this, and maybe if you stop playing like here, the pitch, it's like it's bugged. It's kind of weird. They never fix that in Ableton, but I don't usually automate the pitch that way. I would do like I would just click in the pitch bend thing, and I would write the automation in the pitch section, the pitch bend line. So that way it's a lot easier. It doesn't get stuck, which sucks. You have an effects or ammo in the intro besides the build? Let's see that. I think the intro is pretty dry in terms of effects. Yeah, I don't have anything like any effects playing. So as you can see, it's like empty. But I feel like it was fine. Like it didn't need any effects or high end or like any other complex stuff, because I feel like I like it that way, and it was kind of simple, minimal, and then like it allowed me to go into a lot more heavy stuff and more like crowded, like a build up and then the drop. Sidechain, okay, the sidechain I'm still using Volume Shaper 3 because I'm lazy as fuck to change it, and this is like the template that I use. So basically I have the trigger going to the audio channel, which is this sidechain. As you can see, the trigger is going into the sidechain level, into the sidechain channel, and I have this in beat one shot, and it's pretty much creating this automation every time the trigger plays. And of course, I have everything going into the sidechain channel besides the cymbals, because what I do with the cymbals is add a little bit of sidechain compression instead, because I don't want the cymbals to duck that hard when the drums play. So basically, I have this. It's pretty simple. It's just a little bit of compression, but I think that allows me to have cleaner transients in my kick and snare. Why such an intense high-end boost in the mono? Because the sound, I always use a lot of detuning, or maybe more than just one unison. So as you can see, I'm using 9 and 16. So the mono signal and like plus using a lot of EQs and stuff and effects, delays and all that stuff kind of mess the mono signal a little bit. So I always need to bring that up again. And as you can see, it's like super high in the mono signal, but not as high in the stereo, because the stereo was like pretty decent. And I think this is pretty important, because if I turn it up, see how it sounds without that mono boost. You can see how it goes down here. And even though this looks like really hard, it's not that hard, since the basses are pretty much, they don't have much information right here. So I need to be careful with that, of course. If I would bring it back a little bit more like this, maybe it would sound super harsh. But as you can see, I kind of lag a little bit of information there, so that's why I'm doing that heavy boost on the mono signal. Trvcy sample pack one day? Yeah, I need to make one, but I'm really lazy. I'm not gonna lie. Can you go through your sub, bass preset, post processing? Yeah, let's do that. So the sub is like really simple, really simple. So I'm just using a sine wave. Let me move this a little bit here. So this is just a sine wave with the random knob all the way down. So the sample is playing always from the same starting point. and just a little bit of distortion. But what makes it sound like a lot better, in my opinion, is just this. So basically, I'm using envelope 2 in the master tuning. So if you can see, as you can hear, I have that little click at the beginning, which is the attack that gives me that pitch automation to the envelope 2. So I think that's important. And for me, I always do these kind of rhythmic patterns that sound a lot better when I have this sub playing underneath following the same pattern, right? Instead of just having one single note like playing underneath, you know? So I think that little envelope, which gives a little bit of attack to the sound, it's super powerful in this scenario, I would say. And I'm using this kind of OTT, but it's not really OTT. So basically, what I do with the sub is this. So I would add OTT and delete the upwards compression. So I would delete this and delete the high band. So now I can mess around with these 2 bands. And I can kind of control a little bit of the loudness in the mid section and the low section, you know. And maybe this like this. I would use it like this. So that way you can push the bass to be the loudest as possible without clipping. So because you start noticing when it's clipping. So there's that kind of dirt on top of the sub. So you can start bringing the compression back a little bit. Okay. So you can find that sweet spot where the sub is super powerful, but it's not distorting. And then I'm high cutting around 80 hertz because this is just a sine wave. And I have a lot of information in here, even though I'm cutting around 122. I still have a lot of information here, so I don't want it to collapse. I don't want my sub to be playing like up to 200 hertz or anything like that. Because this is pretty much all I need from my sub. And of course, I'm following the same pattern and following the pitch bend automation. Is your sub just a clean side with a pitch? Yeah, that's pretty much it. What's your better drop? So let's see that. I don't think I have like a lot of percussions in this project, so it's pretty much this. So one thing I'm doing in this project is using this hi-hat to enhance the pattern, the pattern of the drop. Which is, I don't know why I did it, but I just did it and I think it sounded cool. So I did that, and I'm using some rides. It's super simple stuff, honestly, besides this more complex pattern. That's pretty much it. You drop your unison width to steering the global for your main basis? No, for your main basis, no. No, I don't do that. But sometimes I drop it down to 40, I would say 50. So that way I kind of keep my mono signal stable, but I don't bring it back to stereo. I think that's too much. But sometimes it works. It depends on the kind of sound you wanna create. Do you ever layer white noise instead of doing a large high-end boost? No. No, I don't layer white noise because like the way that I go about sounds is just me creating this kind of high-end distortion with the sub, right? So I already have that information there. So I just need to kind of balance it if I feel like it's weak. But maybe you could say I would layer white noise in the sound design process because in this case I'm not using it. But I use it like 90% of the time, like sub and noise together to create that crunchy top end. What variations do you do for the second drop so it's different to the first? I think in this one, the second drop, the last drop is pretty much the same thing, but let's hear this one.
Who from the gate, man?
Oh, wait. In this project, the second drop is not as different as the first one, but I already I always try to duplicate the sounds and use something different, and that from the get-go is gonna give you a different sound and a different idea. So if I would try to use the same exact sound to make the second drop, it's more likely gonna sound like the exact same thing. Is your sub pitch automation match exactly to your main bass pitch? Yeah. So what I do is just go into the pitch bend in the main sound, just Control C, Control V, or Command C, and just boom, paste it. And it's exactly the same thing. Of course, you need to, if you're using Serum, you need to make sure the pitch bend range is the same thing. So if I have 24 in here, I'm using 24 in here as well. Otherwise, the pitch automation is going to follow the same line, but the limits, the range of it, is not going to be the same. Can you show the don't you bass you always use in your song or something? That's a vocal. So that bass, I'm pretty sure I have it on audio. This one. So basically, a long time ago, I created this song called "Don't You Know." That had that vocal sample, and I run it through vocoder and like a lot of effects, and I came up with this. And I think that's pretty cool, so I always use it, or I always try to use it. I always get my sub from 200 hertz plus, and I think that's fine. I think there's no right way or wrong way to do it. I think 200 hertz is kind of high for me because like the kind of sound design that I go for, it's not like I always use super high pitch sounds. Like I always relied on a lot of mid bass information, you know. So I want that 100 and 200 hertz space to be filled with bass information instead of just sub. Sometimes, I think in Shiver I'm using a little bit more information in the sub, but we can see in a little bit. What that little growl feel? So what I do for my fills in the basses, I have a lot of stuff that I created in different sessions, stuff like this. Let's see the entire sound, the entire sample. So I have stuff like that and a lot of weird sounds, basically. So I always have those in audio, and I can always put them in empty spaces throughout the drop. So that way, it's a lot easier for me to come up with different variations and sounds that maybe if I would try to recreate this in this exact same project, it's gonna take hours, and maybe it's not gonna sound that great, right? But in audio, you have this advantage that you can just scroll through the sample and pick different sections. So you have a lot of different options when you put a single sample. Every time I hear that bass, I know that song is yours. Yeah, that's the idea. Like that's why I use it so much. I want people to hear it and be like, oh, this is Trvcy. So yeah, this is we're kind of on time for this project, so I'm just gonna move on to Shiver unless someone has like any other question, like any last question. I think we cover a lot of this project. Like the drums, but the drums are pretty simple. It's just kick, which is one of my kicks, and kind of clipping, kind of distorted, and then I'm using like some layers on top of this. this is something important. When I use layers on top of my kick or snare, I always fade in a little bit of the transient so it doesn't clash with it, you know. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't have any weird post processing in here. Show your master track. I think I'm gonna show it in Shiver since that's a recent project instead of this one. So let's move into the Shiver and we can see the mastering process. It's pretty much the same thing, but it's a little bit more updated. Let's go to Shiver. My master track is like pretty simple, and I'll explain the return tracks. They're pretty optional. I don't always use them, but they're kind of useful because, for example, I don't like to use that much reverb on my projects unless I want to do like a reverb throw or something. But I don't use reverb to affect the signal directly. So if I want to use reverb, for example, in my vocals to enhance some of the stereo signal, I would use a return track. That way I can send the original signal without affecting it, basically. So I'm basically adding information to the sides without touching the mono signal. Okay, Shiver, so play a little bit.
1, 2, 3, 4, play 5, break it down.
Yeah, I think this is gonna be more interesting because I have some layering and some different techniques that I'm doing. Yeah, let's start by the intro. The intro is pretty simple. It's just a resampling from a YouTube video that I got, and I got this little section. So let's turn it off for now. It's pretty much the same thing, but I pitched it down to semitones, so this is the original. And of course, I'm looping it here, so. I really like to make this kind of resampling things. So this was just like an experiment, and you'll notice in the breakdown part where I have more resampling stuff. So I have that, and I have this, what I have in the effects. White noise, super white noise. I don't even know what's doing that. Some of the basses in the intro as well. Straight into the build up, not a really long intro at all.
Make your music stand out, get more views, and way more engagement. Bring your music to life. Get Music Visualizer in every format, even for social media. Get started today. The link is in the description.
And since I was using this kind of hip hop elements, I was messing around with this vocal. Let me this. And I'll show you the original is. So this is the original.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Blaze the hot.
Trvcy sound like Kevin. 765.
So I have a lot of acapellas with that kind of stuff that I can always use for my samples, and I picked that little countdown for this part.
1, 2, 3, 4, play 5, break it down.
And this is from a different one, from 3D once more.
Play 5, break it down.
And this is kind of interesting because this. It's like I have two pre-drop vocals, but this one is already the first bar of the drop. So it's pretty much the exact same concept as Gatekeeper, where I have the main, the first bar being this kind of fake out, and then going into a long phrase. So that's something that if you analyze in my tunes, it's something that I always do. So in the drop, I have the pre-drop, and the first bar of the drop is already like it's already dropped.
1, 2, 3, 4, play by breakers like.
And then I repeat. I have that like the fake out again, and then going into a long phrase.
Get ready for the point. Come on.
Sorry. So that was pretty interesting when I was making this song. And the way that I'm working in this project is layering a little bit more. So the main bass is this one. What's the process for this kind of vocal? Sounds so good. So let's see. I think the vocals already sound pretty clean, pretty good. But let's see. So delay is creating a little bit more space, and it's giving it a little bit more stereo information, more stereo information, since these two channels are different from each other. And I'm also automating them when it's going up, but this one is not as important, I would say, as this two. But in this ones, I'm doing delay, pretty much the same thing, a little bit of reverb, and erosion to enhance the high end OTT. So let's see how it sounds without any processing first.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Maybe I'm automating the pitch. Yeah, I'm automating the pitch to make it kind of move a little bit more and be a little bit more interesting. So I'm using Complex Pro, so the pitch bend doesn't get any weird. So I'm pretty sure I started with just OTT, of course. I always use OTT.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
And it already sounds better, I would say. And I feel like it needs some high end, so I'm using erosion. Pretty much the exact same tools.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
And delay to create that kind of bass and make it sound a little bit more digital, I would say.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And since I know this is not gonna be the main one, I added a little bit of reverb to create that space.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And then this one is like completely dry, I think.
Play by breakers like.
And the process in this one, I was doing pretty much the same thing, delay, OTT, but in this one I added Redux to make it sound more big crushy in the top end.
Play by breakers like.
Going without any post processing, stuff like this.
Shake by breakers like. Shake by breakers like.
Samples already sound pretty okay, I would say. I didn't have to do much to them.
Shake by breakers like.
And I'm cutting the low end, of course, because it sounds kind of weird there.
Shake by breakers. Shake by breakers like. Shake by.
So I cut the low end and OTT plus Redux.
Shake by breakers like.
That was pretty much it. The synth going with the kick and snare on the first part of the drop. Play the layer, and then the second bit of the drop. So let's see how it's made up. What it's made of. So this is the main one. And as you can see, this is what I was saying before. I have this kind of off-grid pattern, but that's repeating over and over. So let's how the main sample sounds like, the original sample sounds like. So this is the original sample. This. So it was just me creating sounds until it was just me trying to get something cool. And I feel like this had some little parts that were pretty decent. So I picked this little section right here, And as you can see, it's not a perfect loop. So you can see if I put it right in the grid, it's like just a little bit more. It's not 1.5. It's like a little bit less. So this is not a perfect loop, and that allows the loop to be kind of going off grid and repeating in a weird way. But the way it's playing and going into this off grid pattern, but then it's repeating again. So that way it makes sense, but at the same time it's kind of like a little bit different, you know? So I picked this little section, which sounds like this. It was pretty cool, but I wanted to add a little bit more movement to it. So I automated the fine tune in the frequency shifter. And that way I'm creating that pattern that's going off grid, but it's repeating again and repeating. And then I'm using this layer underneath, which I'm taking pretty much the entire mid section to make this sound better, because this is the main one. So this is just filling up the low end a little bit and the high end with that information. So those two layers. And it's important to keep track of which is gonna be the main element, because if I turn off this EQ, for example, if I turn off this stuff, it sounds like super weird. It's like both sounds are competing for that space, right? But that way it sounds a lot cleaner, and it sounds like just one thing. Mainly because this little pig right here. And like this is what I think is important in this project is like I'm using a lot of layering and some stuff to enhance, for example, the kick and the snare like this. That maybe you can't even hear that in the drop unless you really pay attention to it. But this is a lot different to Gatekeeper, because in Gatekeeper I'm not using this many layers, and the way that you need to approach the tune and the sounds, it's completely different. And I also have these textures in here, and it's pretty much a mess. It's like a lot of information and a lot of sounds that are creating hype and tension, you know? If I have this. Like super, I don't know, it's like some stuff that you wouldn't normally use, I think. Or maybe if you isolate every part, it sounds like weird. It's like, okay, maybe I would never use this. Or maybe you wouldn't imagine it to be in the background of the drop. Or maybe you do, I don't know. But it's cool. I always try to incorporate new things and new layers and weird stuff that I don't normally use, you know? Because that like guides you into a different direction. And that's important, because I feel like if you start doing the same thing over and over and over, it's like you get stuck instantly. Do you have any other layers on the main bass besides the audio sample and saw wave? Like stuff like this. Like this is playing throughout the entire drop. I'm changing some of the layers, but we can see how the layer sounds without any basses playing. You can hear, like, even though I don't have any basses playing, there's still some energy, and there's still some like type kind of feeling, you know. So if I turn it off right now, you notice. Wait, I have another stand playing somewhere. This. And then that's completely empty. And for me, it's really hard to come up with these powerful ideas or these powerful drops when the background is not allowing me to do it, and it's not like supporting my basses and all that stuff. So stuff like this, and this is pretty much the exact same thing that I'm doing in Gatekeeper, where I'm using this saw wave, this detuned saw wave. It's pretty much the same thing, but it's like repeating the pitch automation with a lot of more textures. And if I turn everything off and I just leave the basses playing. It's like, it's fine, but I feel like it still needs something else. For me, that's a big change, and that's pretty important. So maybe if you're stuck with the drop in like any of your projects, try to mess around with the background and come up with a better stage for your basses to play, you know? Okay. Hold up, is that you, Ivory? Can you go over the scenes in this next section in the layers, please? This section? No, wait, or maybe this section? Okay, I will cover like the entire thing so you can see. But it's pretty much the exact same thing, like the same concept, but where I'm using this main bass. So this is pretty much the same thing, automating the fine tune of the frequency shifter to make it more interesting, and this is the sample. And as you can see, it's not perfect. Like it's just a little bit off, you know, but that's unnoticeable. The main sample is this. It's like the same sample but a different section. I'm doing this, and I'm using a different layer now. It's the same layer. I love scenarios. Sounds in the second row of videos. I love that analogy. Make a better stage for your business to play. Yeah, because it's pretty much when you think about like a band, like it's not just the vocalist singing alone. You have the guitar and the bass or the instrument, the percussions in the back, like enhancing that vocal to sound better. You know, it's not just one thing doing the entire, just taking the entire like all the attraction. Yo, Alex, thanks for coming in. Sanchez and everywhere as bad as you. Remember that? Yeah, I'm still I still think I'm pretty bad, and if you can see me like struggling with projects and not being able to make progress on them, it's like so frustrating. And I think it happens all the time because like we as artists, it's like always hard to overcome yourself, I would say. It's really hard. Sometimes you just want to quit and just don't do like anything. Just don't even open your DAW. But it's a matter of just keep pushing and just try to find that motivation or that creativity, I would say, which is the most important part of like this process, because like the way that you're mixing and you're mastering that's gonna take time, of course, but you'll get there, and it's way hard to just keep being creative and keep creating stuff that hasn't been created before, I guess. Okay, the second drop, I'm just gonna show this part. I think this is what you were asking for. If I have the layers, yes. Okay, so the main bass one, the main sample. think it's like a different variation of the other one, but it's pretty much the same thing. And I'm just using that first one shot, that part, and it sounds fine, but I wanted to make it like lower, the pitch band and the pitch range. So I'm using frequency shifter to make that. So as you can see, when I'm working on a project like this, I'm pretty much reusing the same tools, you know, and changing some little stuff and see if I can come up with something. Because like in every sound in this project, I'm using frequency shifter and modulating the fine or doing something like that to create that movement, you know, and it makes everything sound like the same thing. Pretty much just everything is playing the same universe like that. So what I'm doing right now is frequency shifter to move it a little bit more, and you can see there's this LFO thing that's moving the sound a little bit more. And then I have, okay, OTT of course, and receiver and all that stuff. Wait, where? This server is not doing anything, so it's completely off, so I can. And I have the underneath layer, which is this bass. It's pretty much the same bass. Oh wait, it's not the same one. So let's see the difference. So it's the same idea, but it's a different bass. I think it makes more sense with this one. That's why I made a different one. So now we have this. And of course, more basses underneath. And in this part, I changed the textures a little bit more, I think. This as well, and this big crushy thing that I always use, and that's super easy to make if someone wants to know. So a bunch of different things in the environment going on. And again, some same techniques, like using different basses that I have in audio. And this is like an entire acapella that I've run through like a lot of post-processing. So whenever I want to make like that kind of feel with the bass, I can just put something like this and just scroll through the sample and find a cool spot to use. Okay, wait, you should listen to it. If your sub is low pass at 80 Hz and your mid bass is high pass at, that means there's pretty much nothing happening in 8. Yeah, maybe, but the thing is like this, so when you cut your basses right here, this is like, I think this is a 12 dB cut. So you have, no, I'm sorry, this is a plus 48 dB cut. So you have different kind of low cut. I don't know how to say it. Different types of low cuts, right? So if you would be cutting with a 96, say, this is gonna be like a lot more straight down. So even though this is cutting at 100 Hz, maybe there's some information like around 90 to, or maybe even down to 80 Hz, you know. So this is what I mean. Let me do. So you have your pass. So you have this, right? And you have the slope. Okay, that's what it's called, slope. So what I'm using right now, I think is something like this, right? But even though this is getting 100 Hz, you can see there's some information right here. So this is 87 Hz, and we can still see some stuff like some information right here. But if you do something like this, that's gone. Like everything below 100 hertz right now is gone. So that's the difference between this and this. And that's why, for example, in Gatekeeper, I was cutting at a 122, and the sub was like at 80 hertz. So there's some space, like some empty space right there, but I'm pretty sure there's some information because I wasn't cutting with a brick wall. I was using something like this, you know. And if you're using something like this, you even though you're cutting at 100 hertz, you have like down to 757, you know. It's a lot of stuff. And when you make everything sound louder, like all the information that's here is gonna get boosted up. And yeah, that's the thing. I always try to see how it sounds. Like if even though this says 100 hertz, maybe it doesn't sound like I want it to sound. So I can try something like this, maybe 180 and with this one and not this one, you know. So there's a lot of different setups that you can try, but you need to use your ears as well as your eyes. So even though this is 100 hertz, you need to check how it sounds basically. So I hope that was like useful, or I hope that explained your question. It's kind of weird, kind of complicated, I guess, or maybe it's not as obvious as it seems. You go over the slower basses. This one. This is the exact same sample. So this is the exact same sample that I'm using in this part, I think, here. And it's just me trying to find that cool place, that cool spot in the sample, and resample it. And of course, like I picked that part, but I didn't. I wanted to add a little bit more movement, so that's why I created this automation in the frequency shifter. It's kind of super small, like it's pretty much noticeable, but I feel like this makes it sound a little bit more real instead of just this. You have this attack at the beginning, like super slow attack, moving the sound a little bit more. But the sounds, let me see if I have a serum. I'm pretty sure I created like some of these sounds with one of these serums. It was just me messing around with sounds with pretty much the exact same setup, like 2 saw waves, filtering, sub and white noise. But I feel like I got stuck at one point, and that's why I started resampling stuff and trying to come up with something in an audio file, you know. So as you can see, I have different serums, but none of them are like decent. Yeah, that's how I came up with like this little thing. And I feel like audio, like using audio samples, is super powerful because the way that you can handle them is super easy. So you can just, if you don't like that section, you can just move it to here, for example. And this was just me like working on this project. It was just me moving this around. You know, until it sounded fine, until it sounded cool, and then adding like details, automations, and layers, of course. The example of sounds, just experimenting with instances of serum. Yeah, it was just me getting tired of serum and wanting to work in audio because nothing was working at the moment. The percussive bass is. Can you go more in depth into that beefy layer? I don't know which one, but pretty much the way that I go about layering stuff is I pick the main base, the main idea, what people are gonna listen to. So in this section, it's gonna be this one, right? But if the layer itself is not as good, because it needs some low end, so it sounds like this. And without sub. Okay, so the layer is fine. It sounds cool, but it needs something else. I don't need to touch this layer like anymore. I don't need to make anything to this because I know it sounds fine. And something that happened to me a lot was trying to make everything with just one sound. Was just trying to, okay, this needs a little bit more low end, so I'm just gonna do. Okay, so let me show you. This layer had some weird low end, I think. You hear the bass, it's playing, but it's not really hard. So I just take it out. I just took it out, and that's why I added this one. Instead of just doing something like this. Okay, this needs to be louder, so I'm just gonna do something like this. And if it doesn't work, I'm just gonna do something like this. You know, like. I don't need to do this. I need to know when to stop, you know, because this is something that I used to do a lot, and just using layering as a tool to fix my sounds is like super useful because I don't need to touch these sounds that I know it sounds fine already. So you kind of need to know when to stop and like jump into a different sound, or maybe try to fix it with something else. So creating this is super simple. It's just sub and white noise, distortion, super simple. And it was just me messing around with different effects until it makes sense, you know? At first it sounded like this. It was like, okay, that weird peak in the low mid area is super weird, so I'm just gonna take it out. And I still feel like this section is kinda like weird, so I'm just gonna boom, take it out. That sounds a lot better. So now I added this because I don't even know, but it was there. But I can just take it out, and boom, that sounds a lot better instead of just me adding 200 effects in here and try to fix it that way, you know. But yeah, so my layering process is just pick the main sound, check what it needs, low end, in this case, low end and like a little bit of texture, I would say. So I added some downbeats in here. Of course, at this point, I needed to add the sub. And of course, I always like to add textures because I feel like it adds that kind of ear candy. Yeah, that section is like perfect. I don't need to do anything else with that. So once I move to the next bar, it's pretty much the exact same thing. It's repeating that concept, repeating that same idea, right? But I think in this section I'm not using a lot of layering besides the textures and all that stuff that I have going on in the back. Because what I wanted to do in this part, it was just using this, and I just chop it up like, and this sounds pretty full. I don't need to add anything else to this. So yeah, I hope that explains layering a little bit more. It's basically the same idea in repeating it over and over, and be flexible with it, because like, of course it's the same idea, right? But the way that you execute it could be like completely different every time. Please show that little effect sustain. This one, like this one. This is made in Corpus. So so if you add let's use a sine wave. Sine wave. So now I have this. I'm gonna play one note, like a really low note.
Make your music stand out, get more views, and way more engagement. Bring your music to life. Get Music Visualizer. In every format, even for social media. Get started today. The link is in the description.
A low note, and now I can add corpus and OGT. So this and this OGT, of course. And now you have this LFO tool in Corpus. So if you set it to 2 and you use this LFO amount, you start getting these textures. And you can get a lot of different textures out of this. So what I want to do now is remove this low end part, this sub. And now I can mess around with these settings. Shape. But yeah, that way you can create a lot of different stuff, and you can just freeze this. Flatten. And there you go. You have your noise kind of thing. And you can, an easy way to save this kind of sound is you can click this, you can right click, show in browser, and there it is. So you can move it to one of your folders if you want, like boom, you can drag it there. So let me browser, and you can just move to this folder, for example, and rename it Corpus Texture, and there you go. It's there, and you can always reuse it, and you can even put it into the Serum noise folder, and you can use it within Serum. No, I'm gonna explain mastering in a little bit, so we cover all that part. The sub process, the build up. Okay. So the build up, I have this, just a side wave, I think, with a little bit of amp to add more harmonics. But it's pretty much that. It's like a sine wave with a little bit of white noise distortion and the amp to add a little bit more information. And since I didn't want it to have that much information, I just automated the frequency in the EQ. And it's just going up. It's pretty simple. And then like the sub drop.
1, 2, 3, 4,
It's just playing one low note during the drop or trying to match the pattern to the audio sample. I think it's following the pattern. Even though I'm using these long layers, like these long sub layers, I'm doing I'm writing the exact same pattern, which took me like a long time since these patterns weren't like they were kind of off grid, of course. It was just me soloing that and trying to write the sub. Can you go over the 6 and the stars at 53? This part. So This is like the simplest part. I think it's just serum. My subs are pretty much the same thing. Like the entire time is like phaser, corpus, saturator, OTT. Like I use those tools depending on what I need, right? And of course I make some automations and stuff. But this bass is like making that fake out kind of thing, or that break kind of thing. And then I have like the vocal giving me that like that pre-drop into this section again. And this is pretty simple. I resampled this bass to have more control of it, and I created those patterns. And that's pretty much it. That section is like super simple. And okay, I'm just gonna go over mastering like super fast because I need to do that. Okay, so master process. It looks like I have a lot of stuff right here, but this is not doing anything. So I can just turn this off. And I have dynamics. So I use Ozone 5 because I don't feel like I need to use Ozone 9 or anything like that, because this is super useful. So basically my mastering consists of multiband compression and stereo imaging. So these are the tools that I always use, like stereo imaging and multiband compression. So the thing is that I already mix pretty loud. So my mix sound, if I turn off the mastering, you can even see like the meter picking up red. Which is pretty loud, so I don't need to try to go for a really loud mastering. The only thing that I want to do right now is just balance the entire thing. So in the Ozone thing, in the Ozone multiband compressor, you can use stereo multiband compression, or you can use mid-side multiband compression. So basically, the mid-side multiband compressor allows you to compress your mono signal and your stereo signal like separately. So you can follow the mono signal and take a listen. Oh, let me. And you can do the same thing with the stereo. So the way that I go about this is like, let me show you something. So nope. So what I've done a lot of times to analyze tunes and kind of know what levels I need to go for in my final master is like sub, low, mids, mids, high. Okay, so I have these 4 bands. So after analyzing a lot of tunes, I came up with some settings that are something like this: minus 3.5 dB, minus 10 dB, 11 dB, and minus 15 dB. Okay, so these are my reference. This is my starting point, right? So whenever I do like the first version of my mastering, I want to go for these values. And where do I got these values from? So if you go to the sub and you solo this up, solo the band. But yeah, I'm up. So you can see here this meter. Of course, this is subjective, I think, because if you use the span or any other meter analyzing, or if you use loves, for example, this could change. This could be different. So that's up to you. And as you can see, I'm kind of around those values, right? Minus 3.5. Of course, they can always change depending on the tune. But now let's move on to the next band. So that's minus 8, but I feel like it was fine. Like it didn't sound weird, but it's kind of around this range level. So let's go to the next one. That's pretty much minus 10.6 and minus 12. Go to the final one. Minus 15. So that way, I always approach my mastering that way. I always try to go for those settings. So as you can see, what I'm doing right now is just compressing just a tiny bit. So in this case, the sub is just compressing just a tiny bit, and I'm adding just 1.9 in the ratio, and I have the gain makeup here. So I can I have full control of every band, and I also have mono signal and stereo signal. So I have so much control over my bands that I always do it this way. So instead of just having, like, for example, one limiter or one saturator that's making everything loud, because that way you just have one knob to control the entire frequency spectrum. So yeah, this takes practice, I think, and it takes time until you get comfortable with it and you kind of know when it sounds fine or not. But for example, let's say my track sounds like this. Let's follow the mono signal, and my high band sounds like this. And I go to my high band and I see the meter minus 33. So I know where's the problem. And I can just go into my high band and just pick it up until I know it sounds fine, right? Around there. Or if the mid band sounds like this. I kind of know where is the problem, And it's a lot easier for me to just go into this band and just do this, And I fix it. It's like super easy. So my master is pretty much that, and of course, after I finish this process, I go over the stereo imaging. Oh, wait. So in this part, I just place my bands wherever I want them to be. Basically, the lowest you go into. The low part of the frequency spectrum should be going towards the mono signal. So this is going to be full mono. This is going to be a little bit more stereo. And these two bands are going to be like a lot more stereo because I'm allowed to do it. And something cool that I can do with Ozone 5 is this thing. So basically you have the offset, which allows you to make to create a hash effect, which is pretty much delaying one of your signals, either the left or the right signal, and I'm delaying it for about 8.4 milliseconds, which is creating this stereo signal. I mean, it's already stereo, but if I turn it off, you can see it's like moving all over the place, like around that area. But with hash effect, you get a more consistent stereo effect. So if I do something like this, you can see now the band is going to be placed at one specific point. And that way my stereo signal is a lot more consistent than just without it. Would you say layering gave you a more professional sound? I think it gives you a lot more creativity and a lot more it allows you to be a lot more flexible, because the way that you can fix stuff is all up to you. You can add so many different layers and you have so many options that it's, I don't know, you can come up with a lot of stuff that you wouldn't normally come up with. Do those whole bass something you want? Yeah, they have reverb. They're kind of like they're enhancing the kick and snare pretty much. I'm mildly obsessed with sustaining lasers and that they're watching that. Super simple for my head. Do you make more stuff like Loose Moment? Yeah, I do stuff like that, and I have a really cool time making like chill stuff. Okay, I'm kind of, we're pretty much on time. When you solo, then you could really notice the rides in your mix. Or what I'm doing in the high end right now in my cymbals actually is using a little bit of overdrive. So let's see how this sounds. Now if I turn off the overdrive, it's a big difference, and it's just 17%. It's like super. It's a really small amount, and it's making it sound a lot more present in the mix. But you gotta be careful because if you turn this up, it could get very harsh, so like super fast. And let me see if I have something else in the mastering. I have this 30 hertz cut, but it's not really noticeable. It's not making like a big change in the mix now. Okay, I'm kind of on time. Where I don't know if anyone else have any last question before we finish. I want to make sure everything's fine. Like recording is fine. We're 1 hour and 41 minutes in, so I think we can start finishing this workshop. But I want to make sure, like everyone, like if anyone has any other question or anything like that, or something that I forgot to cover or explain. Okay. I'm just gonna explain something super fast. So when you approach, so the mastering for me is a pretty simple thing, but you need to make sure your mix sound is good. You know, you need to make sure your mix sound is clean. You know, and the way that I approach it is I make sure my drums are the key element, like the loudest element. Then I take care about the sub, then basses, cymbals, and effects, and all that stuff. But this is like the level of importance, I would say. So if you have something like this where the basses are the loudest element, and then you have the drums and the sub and all that stuff, and the drums can cut through the mix properly, that's gonna be impossible to fix it in the master process, right? But instead, if you have this, the only thing that you need to do is just make the basses louder, and basically you can do that with the master process. But so if I go to the drop right now and turn up the basses like a lot, you can hear how the drums disappear pretty much. So it was like this. So that's a big difference, and the way that your mix sound is level, it's balanced before you start mastering is pretty important. So this is a good way to think about it. First, your drums, make sure your drums are sounding fine, are cutting through the mix properly. Then your sub, if your sub is like okay with the level of the drums, you know, then basses, and then everything else. Like that's something that you need to keep in mind, I would say. And those dB values that Isotope was displaying, they were Hermes. Yeah, that's Hermes. But if you use any other meter reference like LUFS or I don't know anything else, you need to make sure what's your metering system when you take those references and all that stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I wanted to make sure that that I explain a little bit of this because I think this is important. And these references, you can listen to a lot of tunes that you like and come up with your own levels for this. This is what works for me, and that's why I always use that starting point. But you can use whatever you want. So yeah, I hope that was useful, guys. And I hope you enjoyed it, that you learned some stuff. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh. So I guess I'll finish it right here because we're gonna be almost 2 hours in. So yeah, thanks everyone for coming in. It was like super fun. I always enjoy so much to do this kind of production workshops or explain some of the process that I go about. So yeah, thanks everyone for coming in, and I hope to see you in a different occasion.